We were frankly shocked to find how far ahead of us they were.
What kind of regime built flying bombs, remote-controlled explosive tanks, and cannons so massive they needed their own railway tracks?
If you've seen our tank chat number 47, you will have heard our curator, David Willey, talking about this vehicle, the Tiger II.
Nazi Germany did, and these weren't just blueprints. These were real machines.
The Messerschmitt 262, which we captured and tested at Farnborough, had a top speed of 568.
Deployed with the intent to terrify, destroy, and dominate. In this video, we uncover 20 Nazi Germany technologies that terrified the world. Strange, advanced, and often grotesque inventions that pushed the limits of warfare. Let's step inside the war factories of the Third Reich and count down these terrifying innovations. 20. V2 rocket. The V2 rocket wasn't just a weapon, it was a warning from the future. Developed under the shadow of Nazi Germany's vengeance doctrine, this was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. With a liquid fuel engine and supersonic speed, it struck London and Antwerp without warning, killing thousands. Designed by Werner von Braun and codenamed Aggregate 4, the rocket soared 50 miles high and traveled over 180 miles, reaching a speed of 3,500 mph. More than 3,000 were launched in the war's final phase. No sirens, no defenses, just destruction from the sky. Though it failed to turn the tide of war, its terror was real. Over 12,000 forced laborers died, producing it in underground factories. The Allies scrambled to seize the technology. Operation Paperclip saw von Braun and his team absorbed into the U.S. space program. The Soviets grabbed the production sites. The V-2 became the blueprint for Cold War missile development and the first human-made object to enter space. Nazi Germany's deadliest legacy didn't end in 1945. It launched the arms race and the space race, all from a weapon designed to punish civilians. 19. Messerschmitt Me-262. The Messerschmitt Me-262 was the world's first operational jet fighter, and it terrified Allied airmen like nothing before it.
The Messerschmitt 262, which we captured and tested at Farnborough, had a top speed of 568 miles an hour.
Capable of reaching speeds over 540 mph, it could outrun every Allied aircraft of its time, closing in on bomber formations like a steel ghost. Armed with 430mm cannons and deadly air-to-air rockets, the Me-262 shredded targets in seconds. But what made it so terrifying wasn't just speed or firepower. It was that it came out of nowhere. One moment, the skies were clear. The next, a formation was falling from the sky. Its Jumo 004 turbojet engines were revolutionary but unreliable, often failing after just 25 hours of use. Still, in the right hands, the Me-262 was a death sentence for anything flying in propeller-driven opposition. Hitler's insistence on using it as a bomber delayed its deployment as a fighter, a strategic blunder that cost the Nazis dearly. Barely 300 saw combat, but they left a deep psychological scar. The future had arrived, and it wore a swastika. Post-war jet development in both the US and the Soviet Union would steal pages directly from the Me-262's blueprints. 18. Tiger tank. When Allied tank crews spotted a Tiger on the battlefield, they didn't engage. They radioed it in and hoped to survive. They were terrified of it. The Panzerkampfwagen, the 6th Tiger, was a moving fortress. With its 88mm KWK-36 cannon, the same gun that had terrorized Allied bombers as flak, it could destroy enemy armor from over a kilometer away, often before they even saw it. Its 100mm thick frontal armor was virtually impenetrable to most Allied weapons, turning direct confrontations into suicidal affairs. But the Tiger's power came with a price. Weighing nearly 60 tons, it guzzled fuel, broke down often, and was a logistical nightmare. Repairs were constant. Crews had to baby the transmission, and bridges had to be specially reinforced. Despite these flaws, the tank became a legend, earning kill ratios that bordered on mythical, 10-1, sometimes even higher. Its psychological impact vastly outweighed its actual numbers. Just 1,346 were built compared to tens of thousands of Shermans and T-34S. The Tiger turned war into a hunt. But it wasn't the prey, it was the apex predator. 17. Type 7 and Type 21 U-boat submarines. Germany's silent assassins beneath the waves, U-boats, brought global shipping to its knees. The Type 7, in particular, was the terror of the Atlantic. Sleek, aggressive, and produced in vast numbers, it became the backbone of Germany's underwater fleet. Over 700 were built, and their torpedoes sank thousands of Allied ships, crippling supply lines and threatening Britain's survival. Type 7 crews became symbols of ruthless efficiency, with their attacks swift, brutal, and often unseen until it was too late. The class evolved across 6 major variants, refining speed, endurance, and lethality with every iteration. Then came the Type 281, a game-changer. Nicknamed the Electro Boot, it wasn't just a submarine, it was a glimpse into the future of naval warfare. Built to fight submerged rather than merely hide underwater, it could cruise for days without surfacing, recharging its massive battery banks through a snorkel while still submerged. It was fast underwater, faster than most B-2 destroyers, and reloaded torpedoes in a fraction of the time. But it came too late. Only 2 went on patrol, and neither fired a shot in combat. Still, the design haunted post-war navies. The Soviet Whiskey, American Tang, and even British Porpoise-class submarines were echoes of this technological leap. Nazi Germany had imagined the ultimate predator, but ran out of time to unleash it. 16. Nazi Germany's nuclear weapons program. Nazi Germany's nuclear weapons program, known as Uranverein, started in 1939, just months after the discovery of nuclear fission. The Nazis aimed to harness atomic energy for war, with scientists like Werner Heisenberg leading efforts in reactor development and uranium isotope separation. Germany had the uranium, heavy water, and skilled researchers necessary to build an atomic bomb. They even began experimenting with early reactor designs and chain reactions. However, the program was hindered by disorganization, a lack of resources, and the loss of Jewish physicists. Divided into multiple research centers, the project lacked coordination, and rival scientists often worked at cross purposes. Despite significant advancements, such as uranium-enriched reactors, the program never reached its full potential. By 1942, the military deprioritized the nuclear project, fearing it was no longer viable. Still, had the Nazis succeeded, their atomic bomb could have changed the course of history.
Plutonium production reactors at Hanford were all of that type.
The terrifying thought of a nuclear-armed Nazi regime was close enough to create panic, even though they never crossed the final technological threshold. 15. Fritz X Precision Guided Bomb. The Fritz X was a groundbreaking weapon in the history of warfare, marking the first operational precision-guided bomb. Weighing 3,000 pounds and designed to penetrate heavily armored ships, the Fritz X was a game-changer for naval combat. Deployed in 1943, it used a radio control system to allow a bomber crew to guide the bomb to its target from up to 12 miles away. This enabled German forces to strike with incredible accuracy from high altitudes, bypassing traditional bombings that relied on sheer weight or blast radius. Its most infamous moment came during the Italian surrender in September 1943, when several Fritz X bombs sank the Italian battleship Roma and heavily damaged the Italia. The bomb's ability to penetrate 200 mm of deck armor made it particularly deadly against large warships, sinking them swiftly and without warning. However, due to the relatively small number of bombs produced and the vulnerability of the launch aircraft, the Fritz X didn't significantly alter the course of the war, which, is a good thing. 14. Night fighters. The Nachtjagd night fighters were among the most terrifying technological innovations used by Nazi Germany. Aircraft like the Junkers Ju-88, Heinkel He-219, and Messerschmitt Bf-110 were modified for night combat, equipped with cutting-edge radar and fire control systems to hunt bombers in the dark. These planes weren't just powerful, they were deadly because they introduced an entirely new form of aerial warfare. With advanced Liechtenstein radar, these fighters could detect enemy bombers long before visual contact was possible.
The use of the radar and my radar operator interpreting, which was not a very easy picture.
The Ju-88 was outfitted with Shrug Music, a system of upward-firing cannons that allowed them to attack bombers from below, where they were most vulnerable. This innovation made the Allied bombers easy prey, turning them into sitting ducks once they entered range. The terrifying aspect wasn't just the night fighters themselves, but the psychological warfare they waged on Allied pilots. Night raids became a lethal game of cat and mouse, with bombers flying into darkness, knowing that deadly German night fighters, guided by radar, were waiting to strike. This technology was a constant fear for the Allies, making each bombing run over Germany a perilous mission with no guarantee of survival. Despite limited numbers, the night fighter program proved to be a harrowing glimpse of the future of warfare. 13. Buzz Bomb. The V-1 was the world's first operational cruise missile, a jet-powered drone packed with high explosives, built to fly blind into cities and detonate on impact. Officially named the Fieseler Phi 103, it was the first of Hitler's vengeance weapons, designed to terrorize Britain after the Luftwaffe's failure in the Battle of Britain. What made it horrifying wasn't just its payload, it was the way it announced itself. A ragged, pulsing engine scream echoed across the sky and then silence. When the engine cut out, you had seconds to run before the V1 dropped from the sky and exploded. Launched from sites in France and the Low Countries, over 9,000 were fired at London alone. Civilians learned to dread the sound, and even more, the sudden lack of it. British pilots risked their lives to tip the flying bombs mid-air, sending them crashing into fields. Anti-aircraft fire took down thousands more. Yet nearly 6,000 Londoners still died in V1 attacks. Though crude, made from sheet metal and wood, the V1 was mass-producible, deadly, and unlike anything seen before. It wasn't just a weapon, it was the mechanical embodiment of dread. 12. Sturmgewehr 44. In the frozen trenches of the Eastern Front, a new kind of weapon began tearing through the fog of war, one that would change infantry combat forever. The Sturmgewehr 44, or say G44, wasn't just another rifle. It was the world's first true assault rifle. Compact, fast-firing, and brutally efficient, it blended the range of a standard rifle with the rapid fire of a submachine gun. Its 7.92 mm Kurz rounds delivered deadly bursts with manageable recoil, while its 30-round detachable magazine kept German troops spraying lead long after their enemies had to reload.
The assault rifle gives the ordinary infantry private soldier the ability to put down that rapid fire.
Designed by Hugo Schmeisser, the Stey G44 answered a cold truth of combat. Most firefights happened within a few hundred meters. Traditional bolt-action rifles were too slow. The Stey G44 was made for the chaos of modern battle, and it worked. So well that its design echoed directly into the Soviet AK-47, and later, the American M16. With every pull of the trigger, this Nazi-engineered rifle helped define the era of automatic warfare, laying down a template that haunts battlefields to this day. 11. Nazi biological weapons research. In the shadows of Nazi science, few projects stirred more fear than their biological weapons program. Officially banned by Hitler, at least on paper, these weapons were quietly pursued in secret laboratories, shielded by high walls and SS guards. At the center of it all was Dr. Kurt Blome, a physician-turned-war criminal who promised the Führer a miracle weapon. But his miracles came laced with death. Blome experimented with plague, anthrax, cholera, and typhoid, sometimes using concentration camp prisoners as human test subjects. In a facility outside Posen, Poland, he infected victims to study the spread and potential weaponization of disease. Himmler, obsessed with turning nature into a weapon, even launched a parallel project to breed malaria-infected mosquitoes at Dachau, hoping to unleash them on Allied populations. Though the Nazis never deployed these weapons on a large scale, the mere existence of such research was terrifying to the whole world. When captured by U.S. forces in 1945, Blome denied everything, yet he was quietly moved to Camp King and spared prosecution, likely traded for his knowledge. Behind the steel doors and sterile labs of Nazi science, death was not manufactured with bombs, but with bacteria. 10. Swastika Fang. Among the strangest Nazi technologies that terrified the world, this weapon-like relic captures the regime's obsession with fusing power, symbolism, and fear. Forged from solid metal, with jagged, symmetrical spikes on both ends and a swastika stamped into its core, it looks less like a ceremonial object and more like something built to intimidate or made to threaten. Though its exact function remains unclear, many believe it had ties to Nazi occult research or speculative Wunderwaffe experiments, where myth was treated like science and fear was engineered. Whether ritualistic or experimental, the object's aggressive design speaks to a regime that weaponized not just machines, but belief itself. 9. Zyklon B gas. Zyklon B was originally developed in the 1920s as a pesticide, a chemical solution for fumigating ships, warehouses, and clothing. Technologically, it was ingeniously simple and horrifyingly adaptable. The product combined hydrogen cyanide with a stabilizing carrier like diatomaceous earth, and was packed in airtight metal tins. Once exposed to air, the pellets vaporized, releasing a colorless gas that blocked oxygen absorption at the cellular level, leading to rapid suffocation. This delivery method made Zyklon B deadly efficient. No complex dispersal systems were needed. It required no electricity, pressure valves, or military-grade deployment, just a sealed room and time. When repurposed by the Nazis for use in Auschwitz and other camps, the gas's portability and ease of use allowed for mass extermination on an industrial scale. Companies like Dagesh and IG Farben manufactured Zyklon B, knowing its fatal capabilities. The true horror lies in how a technological innovation for pest control became optimized for human annihilation. Cold, chemical precision, serving ideology. 8. Me-163 Comet, the Messerschmitt. Me-163 Comet was the only operational rocket-powered fighter of World War II, and remains the fastest aircraft of the era. Fueled by a hypergolic mix of T-Stoff and C-Stoff, it reached speeds over 590 mph and climbed faster than any Allied plane could track. Its engine gave it unmatched acceleration and climb, rocketing to bomber altitudes in under 3 minutes.
And 2 tankers were used to fuel it. The first would supply the sea stuff and then leave the area before a second tanker would come in with the tea stuff.
The Comet's tailless design, steep takeoff angle, and blistering speed made it nearly impossible to intercept or outrun. But this came at a cost. It had a razor-thin 6-minute fuel window and required extreme precision during approach and landing. Even its fuel was so volatile that it could ignite on contact with air or metal. Armed with twin 30mm Mk108 cannons, the Comet could obliterate heavy bombers in a single pass if it hit. Pilots had seconds to fire, often running out of ammunition before scoring a kill. Yet for the Allies, the terror wasn't just its firepower. It was the sheer audacity of a machine that seemed to defy the laws of flight. 7. Schnellboot. Nicknamed E-boats by the Allies, the German Schnellboot weren't just fast, they were silent killers prowling the night.
Oh, this is just amazing. This is the world's only S-boat, a Schnellboot, and Schnell stands for fast, and boy, were these things quick.
The most advanced of them, the S-100 class, stretched nearly 115 feet, weighed 93 tons, and tore across the sea at over 43 knots. Sleek and built with a wooden hull over an aluminum frame, they were designed for stealth and speed, making them nearly invisible to radar when skimming low across choppy waters. Armed with 2 533 mm torpedo tubes, heavy anti-aircraft cannons, and mines, the S-100EE could take down merchant convoys and cripple warships before vanishing into the dark. A typical attack was brutal and brief: engage at high speed, fire torpedoes, rake the deck with cannon fire, and disappear before anyone knew what hit them. Operating across the Channel, Mediterranean, and Black Sea, these boats sowed chaos far beyond their size. Their compact hulls and aggressive speed made them hard to track and even harder to destroy. For Allied sailors, hearing a torpedo wake at night often meant it was already too late. 6. Panther tank. When the German Wehrmacht met the Soviet T-34 in 1941, it realized its armor dominance was over. The answer came fast and lethal: the Panther, or Panzerkampfwagen 5, with a sleek, sloped armor design that mimicked the T-34's layout but turned it into something more precise, more lethal, and far more German. The Panther became a mobile fortress with a sniper's punch. Armed with a devastating 75mm KWK-42 L-70 gun, it could pierce nearly any Allied tank from over 1,500 yards. Its sloped 85mm frontal glacis offered equivalent protection of up to 6.7 inches, making it nearly impervious to head-on attacks. And while it weighed nearly 44 tons, the Maybach 512 engine still pushed it to 29 miles per hour on the road, with surprising agility for its size. But it wasn't perfect. Early models broke down en masse during their debut at Kursk. Yet once refined, the Panther dominated open battlefields, especially on the Eastern Front. Crews learned to keep their vulnerable flanks hidden and let the gun do the talking. Cold, methodical, and lethal, it became the blueprint for future tank warfare. 5. Würzburg radar. Introduced in 1940, the Würzburg radar became Nazi Germany's primary ground-based tracking system for anti-aircraft defense. Developed by Telefunken, it operated in the low UHF band and used a 3-meter parabolic dish to pinpoint enemy aircraft. Early models like the Würzburg A were mobile and manually operated, but by 1941 the improved D model introduced conical scanning for greater accuracy. Its larger counterpart, the Würzburg Riese, sacrificed mobility for a much larger dish and higher resolution. With a range of nearly 18 miles and accuracy within 82 feet, Würzburg systems could guide flak batteries with deadly precision, especially during night raids. Over 4,000 units were produced and deployed across German-held territory. Alarmed by its effectiveness, the British launched Operation Biting in 1942, capturing a Würzburg unit from a French coastal site. This led to countermeasures like radar jamming and chaff. Until then, the Würzburg radar gave the Luftwaffe a clear edge, transforming anti-aircraft fire from guesswork into coordinated radar-guided attacks that darkened Allied skies. 4. Arado R-234. The Arado R-234 Blitz was Nazi Germany's leap into the future of warfare, history's first operational jet-powered bomber. Conceived as a reconnaissance aircraft in 1940 under the codename E-370, it later evolved into a bomber capable of speeds that rendered Allied interceptors nearly useless.
The prototype emerged in 1943 with high-mounted wings and a fuselage cross-section so slim as to preclude the fitting of a conventional undercarriage.
When the R-234 finally took to the skies in July 1943, its twin Junkers, Jumo 004 turbojets made it the fastest combat aircraft of the war, even edging out the Me-262. Though the R-234's sleek design and 735 kmph top speed gave it unmatched survivability, it arrived too late and in too few numbers to shift the war's tide. Its bomb load had to be mounted externally due to the slender fuselage, and engine shortages severely restricted production. Still, it flew high-altitude reconnaissance over Normandy and became the last Luftwaffe aircraft to overfly Britain. Most notably, it attempted to destroy the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen in March 1945. Elusive and futuristic, the R-234 proved Germany could build tomorrow's bomber, just not in time. 3. Henschel H's 129. Nicknamed the Flying Can Opener, the Henschel H's 129 was Germany's answer to the Soviet tank onslaught, an armored beast designed purely for ground attack. Developed from lessons learned in the Spanish Civil War, the Luftwaffe demanded a low-flying, hard-hitting platform that could withstand intense ground fire. Henschel delivered a compact, heavily armored aircraft that put the pilot in a cramped steel cockpit with minimal visibility but maximum protection. Its early versions were hampered by weak Argus engines and handling issues, but the later H's 129B series, powered by French Gnome Rhone radials, transformed it into a deadly tank killer. The B3 variant pushed the envelope further, fitting a monstrous 75 mm cannon beneath the fuselage, capable of blowing through Soviet T-34S and even heavier armor. Though slow and underpowered, it hit like a sledgehammer from the sky. Deployed primarily on the Eastern Front, the H's 129 became feared among Red Army units. But engine shortages, maintenance headaches, and limited production meant it never appeared in numbers large enough to tip the scale, only to terrify it. 2. Goliath Remote-Controlled Mine. It looked like a toy tank, but the Goliath wasn't playing games. Developed by Nazi Germany as a compact unmanned demolition vehicle, this tracked box of death was packed with up to 100 kilograms of explosives and steered remotely via a joystick and a spool of control wire that unraveled behind it. Standing just a foot tall and barely 4 feet long, the Goliath could crawl its way beneath enemy tanks, into bunkers, or under bridges, then detonate on command. Its size made it hard to spot, but it was what the Goliath represented that made it truly terrifying. In the early 1940s, the idea of remote-controlled machines delivering lethal payloads was pure science fiction to most armies. But the Germans were already turning the concept into battlefield reality. The Goliath was a primitive ground drone, an early forerunner to modern robotics and warfare. And though its impact was limited in practice, the symbolism was potent. It didn't require a pilot. It didn't hesitate. And if one failed, they could simply launch another. It wasn't just about the damage it caused, it was the psychological threat of mechanized, soulless attackers that made soldiers think twice before trusting the ground beneath them. This wasn't just demolition, it was automation with a kill switch. 1. Schwerer Gustav. Imagine a weapon so colossal it needed its own railway to move, and then imagine its shells, each weighing over 15,700 pounds, tearing through 7 meters of reinforced concrete before detonating within. That was the Schwerer Gustav, built by Krupp. In the late 1930s, this 80 centimeters artillery piece rested on twin custom-engineered tracks, riding on 8 bogies with 40 axles to distribute its immense 1,350-ton weight. Its 105-feet barrel could hurl an AP shell nearly 19 miles, crushing fortifications no enemy gun could rival. Deployed at Sevastopol in 1942, Gustav pulverized Soviet bunkers and supply depots, even smashing magazine rooms buried 98 feet underground. Yet for all its unstoppable firepower, it required a crew of 2,500, dozens of rail cars, and weeks of assembly under armed guard. After firing just 48 rounds, Gustav was abandoned, its logistical nightmare and the war's shifting front lines rendering it obsolete. Schwerer Gustav wasn't merely the largest gun ever used in combat, it was the ultimate symbol of Nazi Germany's technological audacity and the terrifying lengths they would go to dominate the battlefield. Which of these terrifying Nazi technologies would you least want to face in your worst nightmare? Let us know in the comments. Smash that like button, subscribe for more dark engineering marvels. We'll see you next time.